I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman. What he's going to be back with us soon, he is wrapping up something out of town. And today we're going to talk about Ross Maggio. Now, Ross Maggio was the warden at Angola from 1976 to 1978. And then he didn't get enough of it, so he came back again. And from 1981 to 1984, he was the warden for his second stint. Now, Ross Maggio, he was not a recognized public figure widely outside of the state of Louisiana like Warden Kane would become years later. However, he was a highly respected warden among both peers and inmates. If you'll remember in an episode, I don't remember how many seasons ago it was, but we told you about a warden who got taken captive. That was Ross Maggio. Him and his mother, two inmates kidnapped him, threw him in a truck and made him drive, and he crashed it into the entrance of Angola and jumped out and fired 3 or 4 shots at these inmates. And these were like murderers. One of them was a murderer and he was killed. And the other one was in Angola for armed robbery. He was wounded. And Maggio Sr. got out of that incident pretty much unscathed. I believe his mother was cut a little bit by some glass from the windshield, but could have been a lot worse. That's who I'm talking about today. Now, rather than discuss his history and inside of Angola, which, look, it is hard to find a whole lot on Warden Maggio, I'm going to tell you about his retirement. And Wilbert Rideau, who is another guy we covered in a past episode, The Richest Man in Angola. Go check that out. It's a great episode. He actually had kind of I guess you could say a kinship with Maggio Sr. And when Maggio Sr. retired, Wilbert Rideau actually wrote a pretty good piece on that retirement. I read it a while back and I thought it would be good. I thought it would be something you'd enjoy hearing because it's from the inmate's eyes. A lot of times when we're podcasting, we can tell you things from our perspective, but this is actually from the inmate's perspective, and those can be different, right? And I'm going to read that to you. Angola Warden Ross Maggio strode into the main prison's visiting room where some 30 inmate leaders had been assembled for an important announcement by the warden. Maggio had just finished meeting with his administrative staff, and in his usual style, he wasted no time and got straight to the point. He was retiring. This isn't something I'm doing spur of the moment. When I was asked to come back to Angola in 1981, I said I would, but it would probably be no more than 3 years. I've given this move a great deal of thought and decided that it was time to go on to something else. I've done everything I set out to do when I came here in 1976 and 1981. And I hope I've made some progress for you in your day-to-day living. I'm not the pardon or parole boards, but I have a lot to do with how your life goes on in this place. Everything I did here, I did it because I thought it was best for the overall penitentiary and not any one particular group, both at the inmate and the employee level. I wish the best to you." And then he continued and he said, "There are some things on the horizon that may help some of you, if all goes well. I feel that I've contributed some of the things that are happening right now, and hopefully they will work out. I've talked to the Forgotten Man Committee, which was appointed by the governor to study your situation, and that's the most I can do. I've told them that when it comes to releasing men from the penitentiary, the administration should be allowed some input since we know you better than anyone else. Unfortunately, some people don't share that view, and that is why I haven't had that much input in the past, but hopefully that may change. I want you to know that I wish the best for you. Good luck." There was a brief exchange of questions and answers before Maggio turned and he walked away, Redu said. The inmates applauded, calling to him, "Don't forget us, Warden." He paused, looking back, and there was a noticeable softening of his usually granite features. "I won't," he said, and he was gone. The departure marked an end of an era, one during which the inmates and Maggio had traveled a long road together. But despite any differences, the inmates and Maggio parted with a mutual respect that transcended their circumstances. That respect was as much a tribute to the man as all the achievements of his career. Ross Maggio began his career with the Department of Corrections as its agribusiness director in 1967 when he was 28. The prison's major crop at that time was sugarcane. It was grown and harvested by the inmates, who toiled in the fields under the brutal supervision of an army of shotgun-toting convict guards. Maggio did not like the sugarcane operation, and he was determined to play a role in changing it. His effort was instrumental in eliminating the sugarcane crop and reshaping the prison's agricultural priorities in order to bring the prison into the 20th century. "I'd hate to think that we were still in that business right now," he reflected in the Angolite. "During the sugarcane era, everything existed to get that crop in. Wardens came and went based on what kind of harvest they produced. Academic, vocational, and recreational programs were simply not important. The only thing that mattered was whether that sugar mill rolled, because if it didn't, then the officials did, right out the front gate. You simply couldn't make improvements in the prison as long as that situation existed. The only hope the prison had for progress was the elimination of the cane crop, and we succeeded in eliminating it and replacing it with soybeans, which is currently the prison's basic crop. By breaking the hold of cane syrup, we were able to move forward, and I'm proud that I played a role in eliminating that crop." Now, in 1976, Maggio was appointed Warden of Angola by Corrections Director C. Paul Phelps at age 36. Can y'all believe that? At age 36. You didn't want me running Angola at 36, I can tell you that. Maggio was one of the youngest wardens in the nation at that time. The Louisiana State Penitentiary, for all practical purposes, was the state's penal system. Far removed from civilization, the prison had traditionally been a power unto itself, often able to buck the will of the Department of Corrections and go its own way. But the winds of change were blowing. A new penal system was being developed, and that would encompass many prisons and diverse agribusiness operations. During the 3 years preceding Maggio's appointment to the wardenship, 40 inmates had been stabbed to death and 360 seriously injured from knife wounds. Violence was woven into the very fabric of prison's daily life. Inmate cliques controlled much of the prison and its operations, while a grossly understaffed security force was divided into warring factions vying for power. A local federal court was so shocked by the conditions that it declared Angola cruel and unusual punishment and ordered sweeping reforms. Instead of fighting the court order, as other states had done, Louisiana officials embraced it and entrusted its enforcement to Maggio. At the time of Maggio's appointment, Corrections Secretary Phelps told the Angolite that the department was tired of the Angola situation and determined to put an end to it, especially the violence. The situation called for a man who would deal with the prisoners and personnel on any terms that they wanted to deal on. I want to create an atmosphere here that will allow any man who wants to improve himself the opportunity to do so without having to worry about whether he will live to walk out of here, Maggio told the Angolite on his first day as warden. Introducing the concept of a floating administration, Maggio ordered all of his wardens out of their offices and into the prison to supervise its operations firsthand. Beefing up his security force, he cracked down hard on violence. Unlike other prison wardens who locked up all prisoners to prevent violence, Maggio methodically identified and went after inmate clique leaders and potential troublemakers, locking them up or transferring them to positions in the prison where they were ineffective. Rule-abiding prisoners were left alone. Inmates are not that much different than citizens in the free community, Maggio told the Angolite. 95% of them, when they knock off from their jobs and go to their dorms, want to be able to relax, read a book, listen to the radio, or write a letter. They don't want loud noise and tension around them. The majority of the problems you have here are caused by a relatively small percentage of inmates, and it's the same ones over and over. Personnel cliques were dealt with thorough dismissals, forced resignations, forced retirements, and transfers that made them ineffective. Maggio hired and fired more personnel than any previous warden. He reshaped the entire power structure of the prison. Blacks and Cajuns benefited from his administration, rising to positions never before held by members of either ethnic group. He placed administrative emphasis upon prison-wide recreation programs, creating a gymnasium and laying the foundation for what would later become the largest organized prison recreational program in the nation. A multi-million-dollar dining hall was built. A prison training academy for new officers was established, and that marked the first professional training ever given to correctional officers in the state. Maggio will probably be most remembered for his enforcement of the DOC's philosophy that every able-bodied prisoner would work. When Maggio arrived in Angola in 1976, several thousand inmates laid idle. Maggio put him to work, and in the face of some stern criticism, he made it clear that he would not tolerate idleness. His critics charged that he was placing work before rehabilitation. He shrugged this off, saying that rehabilitation could never be achieved through massive inmate idleness, that idleness produced only a bloody harvest of violence and strife. Hey, y'all, let me tell you, one thing I love about Wednesdays is it's HelloFresh Day. As soon as I get home from recording Bloody Angola podcast, I head straight to the door. And there it is, another beautiful box of HelloFresh. Make delicious food a priority this summer with quick, convenient recipes delivered right to your door. Just choose your meals and select the delivery date. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning, shopping, and most of your prep, so all you have to do is open your box and get to cooking. Cut down on time spent in the kitchen so you can get back to enjoying the summer sunshine thanks to HelloFresh's quick and easy recipes. Every week's menu features options that are ready in just 20 minutes or less. That's even quicker than delivery. You can discover limited-time seasonal recipes from HelloFresh's Taste of Summer series like Old Bay shrimp and sausage and grilled steak lettuce wraps. Plus, so much more. Y'all know that Woody and I love to cook. What we don't like doing is going to the grocery store and shopping for ingredients, which is why we love the time savings that HelloFresh affords us. Regardless of whether I'm in the mood for Italian, some spicy Tex-Mex, or even a good old-fashioned burger, HelloFresh always has what I'm craving, and I love that. Check out those cheesy Monterey Jack burgers and you can thank me later. Go to HelloFresh.com/Bloody Angola apps for free appetizers for life. One appetizer item per box while subscription is active. That's free appetizers for life at HelloFresh.com/Bloody Angola apps. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit.
Knowing how to speak and understand a new language can be an invaluable tool when traveling, meeting new friends, or just even to master a new skill. But it's not always simple when you're bogged down by textbooks and structured classes. That's why so many people trust Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone is the most trusted language learning program, available on desktop or as an app. It truly immerses you in the language you want to learn, like Spanish, French, Italian, Chinese, and more. You won't just be studying English translations. The Rosetta Stone intuitive process helps you pick up a language naturally, first with words, then phrases, then sentences. Don't put off learning that language. There's no better time than right now to get started. For a very limited time, listeners can get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/rs10. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off at rosettastone.com/rs10 today.
The violence and bloodshed came to a screeching halt during an 18-month period in 1976 and 1977. There was only one stabbing death and fewer than 10 stabbings requiring hospitalization. And y'all, that is huge. I mean, Angola was bloody Angola in the 60s all the way into the mid-70s. So for him to be able to take over and they only have one stabbing death in a full year, that's amazing. I continue. At a time when nationally respected correctional officials were surrendering to the inevitability of prison violence, Maggio converted the bloodiest prison in the nation to the safest. I feel that I was instrumental in making Angola a safe place, Maggio explained to the Angolite, but it was no one-man deal. I played a role in a big organizational effort. A significant part I played was recommending the number of correctional officers needed to be higher to adequately staff Angola. We have a lot fewer problems in this prison than in others because we are adequately staffed. In 1976, Judge West accepted my staff recommendations and it worked out fine. Maggio admits that unlike previous wardens, he had the necessary resources to turn Angola around. The legislature gave the Department of Corrections an almost blank check to implement the court order. That allowed Maggio to hire and train an army of correctional officers who would ultimately number around 1,700. The increased security supervision effectively curtailed former inmate freedoms. However, the drastic changes, especially the intense security supervision and imposition of the work ethic, did not go unchallenged by the inmates. In May of 1977, a substantial part of the 800-man Big Yard population staged a work stoppage in protest of the new policies. Maggio quickly nipped that protest in the bud. Security officers armed with machine guns surrounded the inmates and locked them up in cells in a makeshift holding area. Maggio promptly transferred several hundred inmates to other units. The inmates returned to work the next day. That was the only disturbance of Maggio's career, one that created his reputation of refusing to negotiate under threat or pressure. While the strike was broken quickly, charges of insensitivity and a propensity for too much security followed Maggio throughout the rest of his career. I've had a lot of criticism about using too much security during executions and other things, Maggio told the Angolite, but I was never criticized for having too little. I'd rather have too much security than not enough. A good example of that point is the New Mexico prison riot. Security had information that something was coming down, but they only had 17 men on duty the night of the takeover by 1,100 inmates. Can y'all believe that? Had I been in charge, we would have had 217 men on duty because I believe in being prepared before something happens, not afterward. So right there, you see, y'all, Warden Maggio was a be proactive, not reactive type of warden. That's important in prison. Much of the criticism leveled against Maggio after the 1977 work stoppage stemmed from his transfer of a large number of inmates to Camp J. And we've done an episode on that, y'all. An ultra maximum security disciplinary unit. Yes, I drew some criticism from some organizations I would call left-wing liberals about Camp J, Maggio admitted. But it was those same reform activists who wanted the violence cleaned up in the prison, who cried about people being killed here. They don't understand the reality of prison. You have to have a unit like Camp J to lock up violent inmates, those who kill, rape, and strong-arm. As warden, I have two basic responsibilities. First, to protect society. And second, to have a safe, peaceful prison. The prison was out of control. It was being shredded by violence. Unlike the liberals who wanted to stand around wringing their hands in despair, someone had to have the courage to step in and put a stop to it. I made it clear that anyone, and I didn't care who they were, caught with or using a weapon would be transferred to Camp J. I was not going to tolerate letting a handful of thugs terrorize the rest of the prison population. The responsible, rule-abiding prisoners, they didn't end up in Camp J. But yes, the killers, the homosexual rapists, and the strong-armers caught plenty of heat from me, and I don't regret enforcing that philosophy to the letter, despite the criticisms. In late 1977, Maggio announced that he would be leaving Angola to become warden of the Hunt Correctional and Diagnostic Center at St. Gabriel, then still under construction, and we've done an episode on Hunt. For the next year, he personally supervised the construction of a multi-million-dollar facility that would serve as the intake center for everyone entering the state prison system. It marked the first time a warden in Louisiana had been given the opportunity to create and organize a prison from the ground up. The facility opened in 1979, and Maggio settled down as its first warden, but not for long. In October 1981, following a major administrative political upheaval, the DOC asked Maggio to return to Angola as warden. While the task facing him in 1976 had been to end violence, instill a work ethic, and implement the federal court order, the major problem confronting him in 1981 was a seething hopelessness among prisoners. It was a problem that would test his abilities, requiring the exercise of day-to-day management with the delicacy and balance of a trapeze artist to keep prisoners' dissatisfaction at a minimum. During his second tenure, Maggio demonstrated that he was a professional warden. When the Republican administration proposed double bunking as a means to cut costs by avoiding the building of new prisons, wardens across the state generally embraced the concept. And there was a lot of political pressure to do so. But Maggio opposed double bunking, believing it would compromise prison security and the safety of Angola's employees and inmates. And when the Republican DOC proposed the idea of turning the prison's food service over to private contractors as a cost-cutting measure, Maggio once again refused to accept the idea, believing it could lead to some serious inmate unrest in the prison, taking jobs away from them, right? Even if it is at 10 cents an hour or something. But there was little that Maggio could do about his prisoner hopelessness, the situation to which was not within his power. Hopelessness was the direct result of a system paralyzed and intimidated by law and order politics and the removal of incentives and meaningful release mechanisms for long-term prisoners. A tough law and order conservative himself, Maggio had previously adhered to a policy of never requesting the release of any prisoner. But along the way, he had acquired respect for those rule-abiding prisoners who tried to make the best of their situation and improve themselves in the process. And as the situation worsened, Maggio began speaking out on the state's obligation to assist inmates desiring to rehabilitate themselves. Maggio believed in what he was telling the public. In October 1982, 2 inmates barged into his home, subjecting his family to several hours of terror. Taking Maggio and his mother hostage, the inmates attempted to force him to drive them out of the front gate. But the escape was stopped when Maggio ran his truck into the gate. One inmate was killed and the other wounded. DOC officials went before the news media, citing the incident as an example of the nature of inmates in Angola. The next day, Maggio reined in his security force and prevented them from taking any reprisals against the inmates. And he told the press the escape attempt had been an isolated incident and was not representative of the rest of the inmate population. Now, what do y'all think about that? He gets kidnapped along with his mother. After he put out that statement, I bet every inmate in there had respect for him. Shortly afterward, at a time when the Republican governor was refusing to grant clemency to Angola prisoners, Maggio stated publicly that, if asked to do so, his staff would pick as many as 400 inmates who were rehabilitated and could safely be released into society. Maggio addressed the newly appointed Forgotten Man Committee on behalf of some 3,000 long-term prisoners in Angola, calling for meaningful changes in the system to allow for release consideration for deserving inmates. He had come a long way, from the get-tough warden who would not request release for any prisoner to the single most powerful voice speaking out on prisoners' behalf. With the election of a new state administration, the prison monster had been quieted, and hope is here once again. Now Maggio is stepping out of the penal picture. He had an opportunity, like no warden before him, to stamp his personality on Angola, and he influenced the state's penal philosophy with his insistence on control, work, clean prisons, and strong recreation programs. His career was extraordinarily successful. Even his detractors concede his expertise. Being a conscientious warden, Maggio told the Angolite, it's not being a warden 8 hours a day through a 40-hour week. A conscientious warden is a warden 7 days a week, around the clock, day and night. There are 2 ways to run Angola. You can grab the tiger by the tail and hold on for dear life, or you can grab it by the head and try to make it do what you want it to do. Of course, when you do that, you're going to get a few scars and bites on you. Still, I'd rather hold the head than the tail. That's well said. The warden is not the parole or the parole board, Maggio added, but he does dictate the quality of day-to-day life for the inmate population. The work you do, your recreational activities, the food you eat, the time you get up and go to bed, and the kind of prison you live in. Those are the kind of things a warden controls. And as simple as it may seem, that's a measure of his ability to manage, but not every warden places emphasis on those kinds of things. Maggio leaves at a time when the state penal system is at a crossroads. The state is suffering serious financial difficulties. The governor has created committees to try to institute reforms, yet the legislature doesn't feel compelled to loosen the screws. There's some pressure to cut money from the main prison system, as there always is when there are fiscal problems, Maggio said. I hope that we never see a time when the prison budget is arbitrarily slashed. That would be a mistake that may reap short-term gains but create long-term problems. And I hope that we never slide back into a situation where politics gets involved in the day-to-day operations of the prison, he added. Angola experienced those kind of practices before, and it was continuously plagued by trouble. I've been fortunate in that I never had to contend with politics in my day-to-day decisions in running the prison. It needs to stay that way. But, of course, a warden will always have to contend with politics at a larger level, the legislature, the governor, because they reflect what politics want. Maggio is retiring with no regrets. In all honesty, I can't think of any, he told the Angolite. I can think of some minor things that I didn't get to do, like expanding the rodeo arena and little things like that. But the big things I wanted to do when I came here, I've done. I wanted to turn this place around, and I did. Of course, sometimes what you think was good, other people don't even notice that it was done. And on the other hand, sometimes when you have done something and you don't think much of it, someone else will attach importance to it. But I know what I've done, and in the final analysis, it was the best I could do. The 45-year-old Maggio, whose retirement becomes effective October 8th, left on July 8th to take advantage of the accumulated vacation time. Asked if he thought the system would let him get away. Given his experience, he smiled. I don't see why not. They change presidents every 4 years and the country keeps going. A guy by the name of Frank Blackburn actually returned to Angola as warden, and Maggio eventually entered the field of private corrections. And that ends that article that was written in August of 1984. And I'll tell you what, if you're not a fan of Wilbert Rideau's writing, I mean, I don't know what's wrong with you. That guy can write. That was a great article and really painted an amazing picture of Maggio. Did you catch that? He was 45 years old when he retired from Angola. Of course, he didn't sit around in a rocking chair. So he moved into private corrections. And of course, private prisons, a way bigger deal these days. Back when he took it over, private prisons were really just starting to become a thing. States have kind of figured out, a lot of states, that private prisons in a lot of cases save money, and they really, even more than that, they take a lot of pressure off of your state government. When things go wrong, it's not the state's fault, right? It's somebody who owns that prison's fault. So that is the story of Ross Maggio's retirement and a little bit of a story into his life. Now, I want to thank all of you, of course, for listening. Woody will be back next week, and we'll be back to our regular style of storytelling next week as well. We've actually got an episode that I'm working on now, I'm almost done with, that is some current Angola stuff that you're not going to believe is going on. And Woody and I are going to discuss it. I'm going to get his thoughts on that. He's going to get mine, and we'll get all of your thoughts on that as well as you listen. Thank you so very much. Please continue to share this podcast. It's how we grow on Bloody Angola. Thank you to all of our Patreon members out there. And incidentally, we gave everyone a bonus episode this week. Everyone. That dropped on Monday, and it was an episode that I did after reading some pretty interesting things in the Angolite on the weather situation in Angola and what happens in these prisons when the weather turns bad. Maybe you get a twister, right? Maybe you get some flooding going on, those sorts of things. Hurricanes, very big here in South Louisiana. What is the process when those occurred? We talked about all of that. So check that out. It's called Twisters. I think you'll enjoy it. Check out everything else we do. Real Life, Real Crime. Original, of course, drops every Saturday. And Real Life, Real Crime Daily, which Woody and I cover crime news from all over the nation. That comes to you 3 days a week. That's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on the same feed that Real Life, Real Crime is on. That's Real Life, Real Crime Daily. Also, check out Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, where I talk about more society-related scandals that occur out there. And typically, I'll go by adjudicated cases, so I'll actually have the files from court, and I break all that down for you. And sometimes they're not adjudicated yet, but they're huge scandals that we talk about. Sean P. Diddy Combs is one. I've got 6 episodes I've covered on this guy. Every time I turn around, he's doing something else stupid. So go check that out. And I also dropped, of course, a new series on that feed called Becoming 47. and it covers the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump and the investigation into that. I think there's some things that are a little bit shady going on in that case. And so we cover all that as well on Becoming 47. So go check that out. Until next time, I'm Jim Chapman. For Woody Everton, we are your host of Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring gang or Angola.